नमो ब्रह्मादिभ्यो ब्रह्मविद्या संप्रदायकर्तृभ्यो वंशऋषिभ्यो महद्भ्यो नमो गुरुभ्यः। सर्वोपप्लवरहितः प्रज्ञानघनः प्रत्यगर्थो ब्रह्मैवाहमस्मि ब्रह्मैवाहमस्मि। ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः। ॐ पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते। ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः। ॐ ईशावास्यमिदं सर्वं यत्किञ्च जगत्यां जगत् तेन त्यक्तेन भुञ्जीथा मा गृधः कस्य स्विद्धनम् कुर्वन्नेवेह कर्माणि जिजीविषेच्छतं समाः। एवं त्वयि नान्यथेतोऽस्ति न कर्म लिप्यते नरे। असुर्या नाम ते लोका अन्धेन तमसावृताः तांस्ते प्रेत्याभिगच्छन्ति ये केचात्महनो जनाः। ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः। So in our previous class we discussed the third mantra, the third verse of the Ishavasya Upanishad, this Upanishad, in which the Rishi Dadhyanga Atharvana he said that a person who is negligent of this deep inner core that the Upanishads are about, discovering which is the final goal, final purpose of all yogic practices, this consciousness within, the experience of which is the goal of yogic practices, as a person enters within, deeper within, and becomes more and more aware of the shortages, the weed, the thorns that are there in the mind, in one's understanding, and follows the path of yoga, of inner purification, which simply means freeing one's mind from agitating thoughts, from disturbing thoughts. The strength to do this, the capability to actually achieve it in practical terms, is what the practice of yoga is about. And like this, the inner peace, the inner tranquility, the inner joy that a person discovers within, that allows him to transcend this ruthless, senseless pursuit of joy in external objects, which becomes the cause of suffering for so many out there, and for the individual himself, herself as well. Because a person who is forgetful of this inner beauty, of the beauty that lies within, either because he has not created it, he has not done something to cultivate the garden within, he has not done something to sow beautiful flowers within, and therefore there is a complete chaos within, and therefore just keeps on searching in the experience of the senses to an extent that the person does not care how it affects others and even himself, as long as it gives momentary pleasure in this present moment. The final result is suffering for oneself and suffering for others. And this is the naraka, the hell, that an individual creates for himself or herself within himself. That is the naraka, that is the hell that a yogi tries to transcend, tries to protect himself by identifying the three doors, which is selfishness, anger, and blind greed. Kama, Krodha, and Lobha. Selfish attachment, Krodha, anger, and Lobha, greed. These three things. It's easy to say, but when it comes to acquiring the strength, it is the strength of yoga that ultimately helps us. The discipline that a person develops as a result of practicing and going deeper within himself, sensing the harm that a person can do to himself and others. But for this, a person needs to spend time with himself. So the idea of this Upanishad is that as a person goes closer and closer to himself, draws nearer to himself, to the understanding of one's own self, a person develops the noble qualities, moral virtues, virtues that give contentment, happiness, peace of mind in one's life. These virtues, these noble qualities which a person develops by practicing the path of yoga, these virtues that a person develops as a result of that, they are known as the devas, the radiant qualities, the qualities of light. And on the other hand, if a person goes further away from oneself, does not cultivate and develop these positive qualities in one's life, which are universal, they are not peculiar to any particular religion or tradition. They are the qualities that make us human. They are the qualities that make us a good human being, a beautiful human being. Often masters give a list, but these are not exhaustive lists. For example, the 10 yamas and niyamas lying at the very foundation of Ashtanga Yoga: ahimsa, non-violence, which is understood as maitri, friendliness towards all, karuna, compassion, upeksha, which is understood as forgiveness, then satya, truthfulness, aparigraha, not hoarding too much, more than what we actually require in our life, and just making ourselves busy in taking care of it and worrying about it, and thus leaving out on what is more essential within us, what needs to be taken care of within. Then shaucha, inner purity, outer purity, santosha, contentment, tapaha, gladly taking upon oneself a little bit of pleasure, a little bit of pain and suffering which is good for the body, which is beneficial for the body. It can be in the form of fasting, it can be in the form of doing anything that is uncomfortable. Yoga is part, asana is part of that, pranayama is part of that, where there is a little bit of pain, a little bit of suffering, but which is good, which keeps us strong, which keeps us fit, which saves us from falling into extreme luxury, but finding the balance, because extreme luxury is harmful. So finding the golden means, the balance between extreme on both sides. So that tapaha, which is known as tapaha because it burns. Tapas means that which burns impurities, that which burns the filth within. Swadhyaya, self-study, studying about the self, such as we are doing now, where we study the experience of the self as it was experienced by the yogic masters, studying of one's own self in asana practice, studying an aspect of oneself, prana, in pranayama, studying oneself, an aspect of oneself, the mind in meditation. All this comes under swadhyaya. And then Ishvara Pranidhana, the 10th one, which is surrendering back some fruits of our actions, giving it back to the society, to the omnipresent divinity that resides within all beings, sharing something with others. And of course, Ishvara Pranidhana means a lot more than that, but this is the very fundamental meaning of Ishvara Pranidhana. So these are some of the virtues, 5 yamas and 5 niyamas. But we have an intuitive understanding of what a virtue is and what a vice is, what is harmful and what is beneficial in long term. But despite knowing it, like one of the characters of the Mahabharata, Duryodhana, the evil character of the Mahabharata, who says, Janami dharmam, I know what is right, what is good for me, yet when it comes to engaging myself on it, I become weak. Janami dharmam nachame pravrittihi. I know it is correct, but I just can't engage myself in doing it. Janamya dharmam, I know what is harmful, what is wrong, what is improper for me and the society, yet I'm incapable of desisting myself, stopping myself from doing it. That strength is the strength, that moral strength, that inner strength is what a person develops by ardently practicing, by not studying about yoga, but not studying these things, but by actually practicing it, by working hard with oneself, with the body, with the breath, with the mind. That strength is developed within, that internal spiritual muscle to engage in what is correct and to resist in what is harmful, that is developed as a result of that. But a person who does not develop that, he distances himself from that inner core of morality, the inner voice that whenever we do something wrong, what is known to the masters as yama, the internal ruler, the internal voice, which tells us whenever we do something wrong, something within us tells us this is not the correct thing we do. But then we don't listen to it. And slowly that voice becomes so low that it ceases having any effect in our life. Yet the voice is there. That voice is what the word yama, one of the meanings of the word yama. And there is a beautiful teaching in Manu Samhita that only those who are incapable of listening to that voice, they are the ones who require to do all these practices, who need to go on pilgrimage, who need to visit all these holy places. It is only those who are incapable of listening that inner voice, those who can hear it and who can act in accordance to that inner voice. For them, all this becomes unnecessary. There is no meaning anymore in doing all this. So as that voice becomes more and more weak, and a person starts doing things that is harmful for him and the society, that is what happens. What in the third mantra he said, Asurya namate lokah andhena tamasa vritaha, those who neglect this inner core from where morality rises from within. That is the most beautiful thing, because a morality that is imposed upon us by an external agency, that is imposed morality. We do it, we are moral till that external pressure is there, and once that external pressure falls apart, so that such morality is just skin deep, whether it is because of law or whether it is because of religion. Because religion frightens us into becoming a good human being. But that is skin deep. It has not changed something deep within It is just out of fear, out of the society in which we live, out of the social norms that have been created, that we try to be a good person. But what happens within? A mystic goes deeper than that. A mystic goes deeper than where religion goes. He finds that source of morality within himself. And it is that which made the masters of those religions initially moral, may it be Jesus Christ, all these great saints and sages that have lived in India, in other parts of the world, they derived that morality from there. Christ was not moral because of the church. Christ was moral because he acquired that morality within himself, out of which the church was created. So this morality is about that. However, a person who fails to find that, he distances himself from that inner core. And because on one side there is this realm of light, there is this realm of beauty, on the other hand, the other extreme is darkness. The other extreme of light is darkness. And this is what he points out. Andhena tamasavridaha, andha tamas, blinding darkness. Andhena tamasavridaha, realms. And these realms are not somewhere out there, but a person literally creates them within himself or herself. Andhena tamasavridaha, asuriya namate lokaha. Asuriyaha means, as I explained in my previous class, that asushu ramante, asuras are beings who are only engaged in the fulfillment of sensuous pleasures. Asu means senses and ra means to enjoy. Someone whose awareness just exists where the sense meets its object. Where the sense meets its object of pleasure. A person who resides there and has no understanding, has no desire, has no thirst to go deeper into the source of that bliss, into the source of that happiness. After all, where is that source? Where is that bliss? Where that happiness is? An external object just triggers it. But ultimately that joy, that bliss, that peace, that serenity that we experience, that is within us. But simply because we don't know how to find it within us, we trigger it through external objects. Hence, there is nothing bad about it, but every time our joy becomes dependent on an external object. External objects are momentary, they cannot be everlasting. Once they cease to exist, we become sad, we become depressed. And like this, the cycle goes on. A few masters who wanted to go behind the senses or deeper within the senses, and that is the whole practice of Patanjali's Yoga Sutra, starting from the senses and then going deeper. Pratyahara is about practicing with the senses. Then a person goes deeper into the area where these sense modalities are unified in the mind, then even deeper in the faculty of understanding. Like this, through meditation, a person literally presses deeper and deeper within himself, till what they call the layer of fulfillment, the layer of ananda. Ananda is translated as bliss often, but ananda simply means the layer where a person does not lack anything anymore, where there is no desire to acquire anything anymore, because the peace the tranquility, the fulfillment. Yes, Ananda means fulfillment. The root nad actually means fulfillment. So complete fulfillment, the layer of complete fulfillment, the inner layer of complete fulfillment. And these are not just empty words. As a person goes deeper within himself, we realize there have been mystical traditions. Such mystical enterprises have taken place in all different cultures. In India, in Islam, in the form of Sufism, in Christianity, there were mystical traditions. The Gnostic traditions were there. In India, it was not only the Upanishadic traditions, it was the Jain traditions, it was the Buddhist traditions, which also became extremely well known in China, Japan, and all these countries. Why? Humanistic psychologists have done a lot of work, such as Abraham Maslow has done a lot of work. Because generally psychologists are more concerned about mental sicknesses, mental problems. But then there is another group of psychologists known as the humanistic psychologists, who have explored these inner potentials. And when he talks of the peak experience, I don't see any difference between what the Upanishads are speaking and what a psychologist like Abraham Maslow is speaking. William James has done a lot of work on mystical experiences. And so the thing is that a person has to ultimately experience it for himself. A person has to work with himself to experience it. Otherwise, what remains is asura. Asura means just a person enjoys the meeting point of the senses and the sense objects and never goes deeper into the entity which is experiencing it, which is experiencing the object through the senses. So that is what the word asura means. And asura starts to have a negative connotation because such a person just wants everything for himself. He has this egoistic center, and everything that he does in his life is just to fulfill his desires. And he doesn't care how it affects others. So another word that is sometimes used, arati. Also in the Vedic texts, arati. Rati means someone who gives, giving. And arati means someone who never gives, but who just always wants to take. And I think many of the problems, global warming and all these problems that we are facing in today's world, tell us what the society has become. Because we just want to take, we just want to take from everything. We want to, literally, we are not content with the milk that the mother is giving us, but we literally want to suck out the blood out of her breast. That is what we are doing with the Mother Earth. Literally killing it without realizing that by killing it, we are actually killing our own self. So yoga gives us this awareness, this understanding, first of all through its teachings and then through its practices, when the understanding comes from within, when the conviction comes from within. So some of the asura vices, the vices that are fit for an asura, which Sri Krishna speaks of in the 16th chapter, dambha, for example, is one. Dambha means ostentation, display of religiosity or display that I'm a good person, this show off. This is also one of the, Shri Krishna lists it as the first asuri quality, dambha, darpa, then this arrogance as a result of acquiring wealth, or because we belong to a good family, noble family. All this is known as darpa. These are the vices. Abhimana, sense of pride. Others should worship me, others should venerate me, others should respect me. This abhimanascha, krodha, anger, parushya, rudeness, harshness in one's speech. Dambho darpo bhimanascha krodha parushyameva ajnanam, then ignorance, lack of understanding. Ajnanam chabhijatasya partha sampadam asurim. Somebody who does not develop the noble qualities within himself. These are the qualities that get naturally produced and strengthened, and as a result he becomes an asura. These are the asuri sampat, asuri qualities that a person develops. On the other hand, and either a person works hard to cultivate the positive qualities, or these negative qualities will come up naturally, because there are only two types of creations. Dvabhuta sargau lokesmin daiva asura evacha. There are just two types of creations, either those who pursue the light or those who don't. And those who don't, within them, when they don't do anything about it, these negative vices are created and further get strengthened by leading a life into that direction. And when a person transforms, when a person changes, when a person works with this inner garden, and that is the reason the word, this body, and not only the body, but the breath within it, the mind within it, all this is referred to as kshetra, as the field with which a person has to work. And the individual self is known as kshetrajya, the knower, the owner of this field, the one who has to cultivate something in this field. So Daivi Sampad Vimokshaya Nibandhaya Surimata. On one side, the positive qualities, the Daivi Sampat, the enlightened qualities, they help a person to acquire freedom. Not freedom from something out there, but freedom from one's own limitations. Freedom from the wall that we have created for ourselves. Freedom from the darkness that is there within us, by rubbing and producing the lamp of yoga, yoga pradipa, the light of yoga, of which the yogic master so often, Veda Vyasa, in his commentary on the Yoga Sutras, uses the word yoga pradipa, the lamp of yoga, the lamp that a person produces when he uses himself as the rubbing stick, the light that a person, atmanamaranim krutva, when a person uses himself as a rubbing stick, and as a result of that, the light that is produced within, yoga pradipa. So a person who lives in that light, he acquires moksha, freedom, and nibandhaya surimata. And someone who doesn't, he increasingly falls into the clutches, into the bondage of his own limitation. Physical limitation, mental limitations, and this noose keeps on becoming smaller and smaller and smaller till it becomes extremely uncomfortable for the person. His inner life becomes extremely uncomfortable, filled with so much tension, problem, so much depression, which we see in today's society. So this is what the shloka, the previous mantra, was about. Now the next few shlokas are about, the next few mantras are about the entity of which a person can easily become negligent, the negligence of which was mentioned in the third chapter, in the third mantra. The obvious question would be, okay, if we are negligent of it, then what is it? Tell us about it. We want to know about it. So he starts talking about that, and that is the major discussion that pervades the Upanishads, all of the Upanishads. They are about an entity which, in one word, when we use the word, one word, Atman, which is translated into English as self, with S capital, to differentiate it from this limited understanding of oneself known as ego. Not that. But that's why we write it with S capital. Atman. The Sanskrit word is widely used, and when we read the spiritual literature, even the Light on Yoga, if you look at the Light on Yoga by Guruji, after the introduction, there is this song of the soul. Na ham manushyo na cha deva yaksho na brahmana kshatriya vaishya shudraha. It's a beautiful, you can have a look at it just at the starting, before Guruji starts discussing the asanas. Soul is another translation of the word Atman. I don't really like that translation very much, because soul has a very specific connotation, especially when we come from Judeo-Christian traditions. There is a very specific meaning. And what is understood as soul in those traditions comes closer to what we understand as the subtle body than what we understand by the word self. It is very different. The self of the Upanishads, the Atman of the Upanishads, is not the soul of the Judeo-Christian traditions. That would be the Sukshma Sharira, the subtle body of the Vedantic understanding. However, I'm not going into that detail right now. So this word Atman, which we hear, which has been used again and again in the literature, what does it really mean? What are its meanings? First of all, grammatically, the word has been derived from various roots, and that tells us a little bit about the very verbal meaning of this word, Atman. The first obvious root is Atman. Man would be the suffix, and the root would be At. And At means At satatya gamani, that which is continuously present. Satata means continuously, and gamana, which is continuously present, which is ever present. That is one of the meaning, that inner presence which is present within every thought. Within, emotions change, our moods change, our thoughts change, our memories change, our understanding changes. Everything in our mind changes, yet something out of which is the very constituent of each one of these, which is the very light that enlightens every emotion, which enlightens every thought, which enlightens every idea that comes into the mind, that silent witness which witnesses everything that constantly keeps on changing in the mental world. And this a person literally experiences in meditation. Thoughts come and go, moods come and go. It's like the weather out there, sometimes it is sunny, sometimes it is turbulent. Yet the space in which all these clouds, strong winds, hailstorms enter, that space always remains there. And it is that space within which gives space to all these emotions to come up, which is the witness of all these emotions as they come up, which registers all these emotions, that consciousness for which sometimes the word Chaitanya, which literally means consciousness, is used. That is what the word Atman stands for, that presence which is like a silver screen. The projection keeps on changing. The pictures that are being projected, they keep on changing. But the silver screen remains the same. The very foundation on which everything is being projected, that remains the same. So that continuous presence, so Atman literally means, grammatically it means that which is continuously present within the changing environment, within the inner changing environment, that very substratum, the substratum of the river bed over which these thoughts, these currents of thoughts are flowing. That foundation, that river bed, that substratum, that is one meaning of the word Atman. Another way of forming the word Atman grammatically is to form it with the root ap. Transform pa into ta, Atman. It becomes Atman. Ap in Sanskrit means to pervade. So that which pervades, the entity which is all pervasive. It pervades, as we have repeatedly earlier also we saw, it pervades everything by giving existence to it. Every time we use the verb is, we refer to that existence. Names change, forms change, but that existence to which we refer when we use the word, the root is sat in Sanskrit, asti, it is. That existence for which the word sat in Satchidananda, that pure existence, ekam sat, when the Vedas they speak of it, the pure existence is one, but vipraha bahudha vadanti, wise masters, the wise men express it in various words, in various names. So that pure existence, that sat, that satta, that pure existence, which pervades everything. Everything that ever came into existence was pervaded by that. And then the entity within which registers the existence, that consciousness, that. So that is what the word Atma, if you derive it from the root ap, which means to pervade, that is what the word Atman stands for. And another possibility is A means A together with the root Da. Da means to give, and A, when you add the prefix A to the root Da, it means to take, to experience. Adana. Dana means to give, and Adana means to take. So the entity that takes in information through the senses, that consciousness within which makes use of the senses as its tools. Therefore, the senses, they are known as Bahya Karana, the external tools, and this continuous flow of thought known as Manas, the mind, Antahkarana, the inner tools of perception, the outer tools of perception and the inner tools of perception. So the entity which makes use of inner and outer tools of perception to take in information from the external world. That is also what the word Atman means. Yachapnoti, that which pervades. Yachapnoti yadadatte, that which takes in. Because everything that we experience, to us it seems we are experiencing out there. But in reality, everything that we are experiencing, we are actually experiencing it within ourselves. And the metaphor that was used by the Greek philosophers for this was that metaphor of the shadows in a cave. You know, people are dancing out there around a fire, and the viewer is sitting within the cave, and all that he sees is actually just the shadow of those people dancing out there, which is falling on the wall of the cave. That is all that is accessible to the inner viewer. What we think we see out there, we are actually seeing it within ourselves. And that is why, I mean, today with modern psychology and neurology having made so much progress, they can actually see what the moment we become aware of something within, it is actually a few microseconds after it has happened out there. So all our experience is a little bit in the past, a little bit in the past, just a very little bit. And the mind has been created like this to bridge this gap. And it is this attempt of the mind, this unconscious attempt of the mind to bridge this gap, which is what leads to the illusions that we sometimes happen to have with our senses. That is because of that. It's fascinating. It's really fascinating. In any case, yachapnoti yadadatte, that which takes within itself, yachapnoti yadadatte, yachasya santato bhava, and of which the presence is continuous, tasmad atmeti kirtyate, that is known as Atman. So it is this Atman that the Upanishads speak about, Ishavasya Upanishad and the other Upanishads. They are about this inner entity which, in the understanding of the masters, does not become the object of our understanding because it is the very subject. And therefore sometimes the Upanishadic masters are faced with this difficulty that navidmo, we don't know, navijanimaha, we don't understand how to convey it to others because it is completely different. Anyadeva tadviditad, it is completely different from everything that is known, and yet it is also, it transcends everything that is unknown. It is neither known, neither it is unknown. It is the entity which knows everything, with which a person knows. And when our practice of yoga, when our asana practice becomes a method of drawing back our awareness into ourselves as the very first step that a person can take into this direction in which the direction of awareness has to be changed. The awareness which is usually in our life all the time from in to out. That is the direction of our awareness. The stream of awareness constantly travels from in to out. Then suddenly we desire to make a shift in it, so that rather than flowing from in to out, this faculty of understanding, rather than allowing it to understand something out there, but changing its direction and making it inward, facing it inward, so that it starts exploring itself, its very core. That is what these Upanishadic teachings want to inspire in our life. This is what happens when a person practices yoga in his life, because already in the practice of yoga we have to draw back our awareness, we have to draw back our attention, at least to our body. So there is some drawing back, some pulling back. Usually the example that is given in the Bhagavad Gita is yada samharate chayam kurmongani vasarvashah, like a tortoise, like a turtle, which draws back its senses within. So like this, when a person, this is the first step. Asana is literally the first step, which allows us, in practical terms, not only in words, but in practical terms. And in the other way it is very difficult, because we could just sit down in meditation and try to meditate without any preparation, but it doesn't work. We can close our senses of perception. Many people meditate literally like this, closing all the 5 doors of perception, yet skin cannot be closed. You cannot literally cover the whole skin. So some type of perception will still take place. And even if no perception take place, the mind is uncontrolled. How will we acquire control over that mind? How? That is the control. The practice of asana allows us to access our mind through the body, because the mind and the body is deeply connected, and the connection is prana. Prana bandhanam hi somya manaha. That is one of the Upanishadic thesis, Upanishadic understanding, that the mind is bound to the body through the prana. The prana is literally the rope that keeps the mind connected. Mind which is extremely subtle to this gross body. And a person can affect the body by working with the mind. That is also possible. And the opposite is also true. A person can affect one's mental state by working with the body. So by acquiring stability, when the mind becomes stable, the body becomes stable. When we acquire stability on a physical level, also psychological, some amount of psychological stability is developed. Of course, it has then to be further refined. But first, when we clean a cloth, we first clean it from the gross dirt, and then only we go into the subtle one. The first thing is always we start from the gross. Then it is easier later to work with increasingly subtle entities. So asana gives us that capacity to work with our mind, to work with our inner world, reaching it, affecting it by working with our body, which is easily accessible to us. That is the whole idea behind yoga practice. The rest is actually doing it. The rest is actually working with oneself about it. We'll come back to the next mantra, in which Dadhyanga Atharvana, he speaks about that unmoving, anejat, the unmoving, yet everything is moving. Everything is constantly moving. The mind itself needs movement. The moment there is no movement, the mind stops registering it. This is literally very true about every extension of the mind. They have done beautiful studies with what are these contact lenses? Yes. So if they have done a study with projecting a particular picture on the retina with a contact lens, and if you allow it to the picture to become still on the eye, you stop seeing it. You don't see it. We actually see things either because things are moving or then our eyes are constantly moving. What do we call it? The saccade. How is this movement of the eye called in English? I think it is called the saccade. This constant movement. If this movement wouldn't be there, we would stop seeing. We require for the sake of seeing, and the same is true. I mean, if the tone is the same for a while, we stop registering it. We stop hearing it. That is what they call also people who live close to petroleum refineries. At some point they stop smelling it. They don't smell it anymore because it's always the same smell. They become indifferent to it. Our senses, our mind require constant change. They require constant movement. When there won't be any movement, they stop registering it. They stop noticing it. And this is the entity which does not move, which uses the movement to register, but itself does not move. And that is the reason it transcends the senses, anejat ekam. We'll come back to this mantra in our next class. Let us finish the class today. Any quick thoughts, observations, or questions? Yes?
You said earlier about some people who are into the light, some darkness.
Yes.
Speak up, we can't hear you.
Can you speak louder?
I can rephrase. Yeah, I will say what you said. Yeah.
So is this something that you would see as a karmic thing? Also, you said some people come to hear and some to see.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So is this depending on one's past karma, and is there something that can be done to change this? Would yoga be one way that can be used to change this?
Yes. How we are in the present moment is the result of our past karmas. That is the whole understanding of karma. However, karma is not something, there is a difference between daiva, destiny, and karma. Destiny is something that is fixed, and it is, you can do little to change it. Karma, the idea of karma is that it affects us to this very moment, but it's a karma. Karma means an action. What we are in the present moment is a result of our previous actions. Okay, now in this present moment, when we make the correct choice and take up a new action, we have introduced the change. And that is why the whole idea of karma yoga The whole, why in the beginning, before stating all these things, Dadhyang Atharvana kurvan neveha karmani, by working hard with oneself. He speaks of karma yoga, he speaks of working with himself. The only way something can be changed, because what we are today is a result of our actions, and the only way to change actions is to perform actions. That's all. So there is no other way. There is simply no other way. So yes, yoga, performing good work, cultivating these noble tendencies. How would a person cultivate these noble tendencies? Just by attempting to cultivate them? It doesn't work that way. One has to engage himself in good deeds, in good work, in good karmas. And these good karmas, because every karma leaves a subtle impression. Every karma produces an experience. Every action produces an experience within us. Action is a movement. Movement produces experience. If it's a good action, it produces a good experience, and good experience leaves a good impression, which is what we call karma samskara. Karma samskara, which for short people call karma. The complete word actually is karma samskara. These subtle impressions, which are there in the pre-conscious and unconscious mind, and therefore really also decide how we behave, how we react, how we behave towards others. And this, because we have no conscious access to that, the only way to change that from deep within is by producing, by impressing upon oneself good karma samskaras, by performing good deeds. So the only way is working. That is what in the second, evam tvai nanyathe tosti na karma lipyate nari, engaging yourself in good deeds. There is no other way to save yourself from the impression that get impressed as a result of bad deeds. A person would have to engage himself in good deeds to save himself from getting engaged knowingly or unknowingly in harmful deeds.
Okay. Let me ask in another way. What specifically I had in mind is, suppose somebody in one life did a lot of good deeds. Is it true that the next life he will reap the benefits in some way and receive more? Is that a bad thing, or because then he has come to take and not to give?
Yes.
As a result of his past life.
Yes.
So
yes.
would that be a bad thing, or if he realizes that, then should he change it somehow?
It's a yes. The question, as I understood, was that if a person, as a result of his good deeds in this life, experiences good results in his next life, is it a bad thing or a good thing? Was that your question?
If he is receiving,
If he is receiving, yes.
Because from the talk I understood that some people come to give and some to take.
Yes.
So it looked like it's not nice to just take or to give. I guess this is a central idea.
What he is getting in his life would be the result of his good deeds, and he has all authority to keep it to himself. Nobody can stop it because he has literally earned it, so it is his. He has to make the conscious choice of what he wants to do. He will experience it. After having experienced it, it will be finished. He will have experienced no growth as a result of that. Growth comes when a person, what is lawfully his or her, gives it back to the society. It is that renunciation of which Dadhyang Atharvana spoke in the first mantra, Tena tyaktena bhunjithaha. Nourish yourself not by taking. Develop yourself not by taking, but by giving it back. By sharing it with others. Tremendous growth comes from there. And that is why, for example, Bodhidharma, when he went to China, I keep on repeating these anecdotes because they are so deep. The story is the same in the Upanishads. But this one is well known, particularly to Chinese people. I was amazed everybody in China seems to know about this. At least the ones that I meet, they seem to know it. That when Bodhidharma, he went to China, he met this great emperor who was known for his noble deeds throughout China. When he asked, what about this merit? Bodhidharma said, of no use. This is of no use. All the good merit that you have accumulated as a result of your good deeds, they are of no use. And the Upanishadic understanding there would be, as long as it just results in some sense enjoyments, in some that is where religion loses its relevance in the Upanishadic and yogic understanding. Because in religion, a person comes to God and prays and says, I want this, I want that, and he gets it, and that's it. The journey is finished. There is no growth in there. The growth is that when a person gets it, has it, is lawfully his, he can enjoy it, yet he gives it to somebody else, shares it with somebody else who is in greater need, who is in greater deprivation, not with a sense of superiority, but with a sense of service, with a sense of the need to develop further, deepen the peace within, deepen the contentment within. That growth is tremendous, and it is that growth that Dadhyangatharvana is talking about. So yes, a person is, the fact that many of these extremely super rich people have all the wealth they have is a result of their karmas. Now it is their choice. They can give it back to the society and experience even further growth, which would be very personal, first-person, deep contentment, inner fulfillment as a result of that, or just to use that money to fulfill their sense enjoyments and then falling back into the same cycle without any growth. So it's their choice. It's always their choice.
So as I see it now, there are two ways that it can work.
Yes.
And one is he would just enjoy the cycle and finish there.
Yes.
Or if he suppose channelizes back into for the good of society,
yes,
he would keep on a higher awareness.
Exactly.
Yeah?
Yes, exactly. If he would, that is the whole idea. That is the whole idea. Tena tyaktena bhunjitha, what in the first mantra he said that one should nourish himself, one should evolve himself, develop himself through that concept of tyaga, through that concept of renunciation. That is how it starts making sense. Otherwise, how will somebody benefit by giving away things? We think that we benefit by taking things.
Would you see that as, like, for example, Bill Gates as an example of that?
Sorry?
Would you see Bill Gates as
Bill Gates is a wonderful example. Yes, yes, Bill Gates, and many of these super rich people have presented a wonderful example by doing that. Yes.
How about our money?
In India, still, we need to. Unfortunately, these ideas need to take root more. Our rich people still need to work harder in this aspect. But that the whole idea of dhanam samavibhajanam, when Gita speaks of dana, giving alms so that wealth will get equally distributed in the society, which is the biggest problem that we are seeing today. Richer people are becoming richer and richer day by day, and the poor are becoming poorer and poorer day by day. This disbalance in society.
So, in the way that we're talking about is purifying charity.
Yes.
If I understand what you're alluding to, is sometimes called dana brahmanita.
क्या कह रहे हैं?
Dana brahmanita.
Dana.
Brahmanita.
I don't know that word.
It's Sanskrit, I think.
Sanskrit.
That's used to imply purifying charity. Charity that's free of kind of money.
Okay. Charity that is free of?
Selfish motive.
Yeah. Charity that is free from of selfish motive. Yes. The whole idea of karma yoga is that type of charity. Yes, that is when karma becomes yoga, becomes a method of finding unity within, when a person performs charity with that need, with that desire, not to gain something in response, but for this inner development. Yes, that is the whole idea of karma yoga. And the very foundation of jnana yoga, bhakti yoga, very often people fail to recognize the importance of karma yoga. Karma yoga is the single most important thing. Bhakti yoga, jnana yoga follows on its own. Karma yoga is the most important, because there is where the work takes place.
So you mentioned, just to try to connect with Buddhism, so in Buddhist scriptures they always talk about non-self, as that not any experience doesn't have an intrinsic self.
Yes.
But the self with the big S, is that mentioned at all in the Buddhist scripture, or he just talks as end of suffering?
I'm not a scholar of Buddhist scriptures, so whether it has been mentioned or not, I wouldn't be aware of that. But the way I understand it, the understanding of consciousness in Buddhism and in Upanishadic understanding is what is sometimes today known as the string model and the rope model. So the Buddhist understanding of consciousness is like a rope is not a continuous single thing. It is bits and pieces intertwined with each other, and you get this continuous rope which you can make as long as you want, so that is what they call sometimes the rope model of consciousness. Consciousness is like all the experiences coming in and coming together, but inherently it is completely empty. However, the Upanishadic understanding of consciousness is what they sometimes refer to as the string model. String model in the sense like a string which goes through all the experiences, which strings all the experiences together. The individual experiences would be like pearls, and the string that goes through all of those experiences, that is there. So that is a philosophical difference that is there in the way Buddhism presents it, and it is a major difference that has been there between Vedanta, the Upanishadic understanding, and between Buddhistic understanding. Having said that, the way Mahayana Buddhism has started to explain shunya, the complete absence, and the way Brahman is explained in the Upanishads, neti neti, as the negation of everything. On that, the shunya of Buddhism and the Brahman of the Upanishads, there I see no difference at all. So yes, in the way the philosophical foundation, I mean, if you look at the philosophers, Nagarjuna, I have very limited understanding of Buddhism, but with what I know about Nagarjuna, his Madhyamika Karikas, which are the very foundation of Shunyavada, and on the other hand, Vedanta, there is a tremendous philosophical difference. Yet, when it comes to the experience of the Buddha, when it comes to the experience of the Upanishadic masters, then the experience that they are talking about, the terms that they use even, are extremely similar. So yes, philosophical presentations, philosophical models of explaining something can be varied. It just gives us a different perspective, which is equally relevant, beautiful. And so that is how I unify it myself. However, when they speak of anatta, that non-self, that is what Patanjali also speaks about. It is that limited sense of ego. So there is no problem at all. So there are many points on which both systems beautifully converge. If they don't completely are the same, but still they converge, they overlap, which is there. Okay, so let us conclude for today. Yes, we will conclude with this prayer. That is why in the end I like because the Upanishads speak of Sat, pure existence, and the Buddha prefers the word Asat, non-existence. He prefers that word. And the Vedas, they say, these two are just words, na sadasit, no sadasit. In reality, the Supreme Truth can neither be defined as pure existence nor as non-existence, because ultimately they are just words which okay. Sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramayah, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschid dukkha bha. Om shantihi shantihi shantihi.